Hi, Mrs. Rebeka Qena. It's very nice to have you here today with the Bulan Institute for Peace Innovation. Thank you so much for speaking with us today and giving us some of your knowledge about this very particular topic. I am Eve Doyen-Blanchard. I am a research assistant for the Bulan Institute for Peace Innovations. So we are going to get started on the topic of Kosovo and rehabilitation and reintegration. So
Thank
Kosovo has repatriated about 120 women and children from the Middle East. And maybe could you tell us what kind of approach has been taken in Kosovo in rehabilitating and reintegrating these children and these women?
Thank you very much, Eve, and thank you very much on the invitation. I hope that the experience that we have and that I have as a personally in the Community Development Fund, which is an organization that works in this program, I hope that it will be of some use and it will get others to think and to actually reevaluate or just think of other ways that the process is doing, because we have also learned a lot from many other countries. And as far as Kosovo is concerned, the Republic of Kosovo has actually repatriated a total of 121 persons that have been repatriated in an organized way from Syria and Iraq since 2019, out of whom 33 are women, 10 men and 78 children. Another 123 have returned also on their own accord. So the process of rehabilitation and reintegration actually starts within the moment. Obviously, the negotiations and the agreements on their repatriation begins earlier, which the Republic of Kosovo is often supported through other countries as well. For example, in what happens is then within the first 72 hours, this process begins. There are various strategies for prevention of violent extremism that Kosovo has adopted. And within these strategies, for example, the strategy, which is the strategy for prevention of violent extremism and radicalization, has 4 general objectives, and de-radicalization and reintegration of radicalized persons is one of them. So the measures that actually are included in the practical rehabilitation measures are psychological and religious counseling to prisoners in connection with illegal activities related to extremism. The second one is a provision of social support to them and their families. And the third one is the development of employment programs or other methods of reintegration. So these restorative measures actually happen within the 72 hours. Most returnees initially are returned to their families, but in fact, what happens is that first they are held within the detention center, whereby the thing is that men will be actually sent over, they end up in prison, they are sent to prison, whilst women and children are held for 72 hours, assessed, and then they are released within their families. There is a reason for why this is being done this way, and mainly the reason is because children that are returned know nobody else. So basically it's only their mothers or cousins, whoever is actually traveling with them. So they have no other relatives. So in that sense, it has been decided that the best approach is to actually keep them together. What happens is that obviously the women will be evaluated and actually assessed whether they pose any risk, whether they can be released, but most of them are released home and they are under probation. So that means that most of the programs that they take part in are compulsory. Some things are voluntary, but in a way, depending on their status, on their legal status, this is what happens. They do have to take part in the program in some parts. What happens is that there is an institute of health that actually has the mandate, the National Institute on Public Health. And this institute has the mandate to actually decide whether these persons are at risk of spreading any diseases, any contagions. So it's actually that during these 72 hours, there might be psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, other doctors who do these evaluations, and they can recommend to this institute. However, mainly they are returned to their families. What happens is then during the first stage of rehabilitation then begins after the first week. These people are returned. After a week, the team goes back to them in order to assess the individual, in order to assess the family, in order to assess the community where they're staying, because mainly it's they return into their families, or for example, the woman might be returning to her husband's family. So what happens is that after this assessment, this rehabilitation, there is basically the aim is to actually include all the family members in order to see what their needs are as well. What is their status in documentation, registration, social scheme assistance. So all of these steps are decided through an individual plan for the family. And for example, if they have no home, there is the coordination with municipal authorities to find this housing. In cooperation with the Ministry of Education, children return to schools. So all the other relevant ministries are included in the process. And it is important to say that each of these ministries has a person that is assigned to implement the developed plan, which is actually under the Ministry of Internal Affairs with a division. It is a specific division, which is it is Division for Prevention and Reintegration of Radicalized Persons. So everything is coordinated and happens under the, let's say, watchful eyes and the coordination of this DPRPR, the division. So this is a special unit that has been established by the government of Kosovo in 2017 because they work in managing cases individually. So I think there are also other measures, as I said, the punitive measures, which obviously happen to the persons that end up in prisons, because the Correctional Service of Kosovo has actually begun working and accepting foreign fighters for the first time in 2014. So there is some experience. However, this soft approach is something that is ongoing, and actually, because mainly we're talking of currently the work that we do with the women and children.
Thank you, Mrs. Qena. You've talked about this kind of 72-hour quarantine, which is a very short period compared to some other countries, which do a month-long quarantine for children and women. What do you think about how it is only 72 hours in Kosovo?
Well, the thing is that in a way, they do appear in front of the court. The government knows where they are. They are assessed mainly for the initial assessment is done. I think this is part of also the approach that is being used in terms of the soft approach, in terms of kind of assessing and kind of integrating the persons, making them feel welcome at home. Now, let's say, obviously, whoever the possibility of them having committed crimes exists, and there are punitive measures for all the persons that are that are proven guilty. So I think, I mean, this is the current approach, and I think it helps in the overall acceptance, in the overall rehabilitation, this rehabilitation and resocialization, because they're not seen initially and only as crime doers, because a lot of them do have different circumstances. A lot of them ended up in places where they did not want to be. As I said, there are the punishments for those that need to be punished, and however, this is currently the system. So I wouldn't really know why exactly it's being done. I can only say if it benefits, and sort of if this is a positive thing, and in a way, it is, because let's not forget that often even the returnees that they do have the fear, they do have the feeling that they're not welcome, they do have the stigmatization, which to a degree is understandable. However, the government has tried not to positively discriminate them, let's say, um, being treated as a human being that has made mistakes is one of the things, but the work is mainly focused, as I said, on women and children, because we're talking of especially children who have had no decision or no opinion given on whether they wanted to be part of these events that in a way are still impacting their lives. And we're talking of not stigmatizing the whole community, because we're talking of children that need to be part of society, that needs to give them the opportunity, which they unfortunately did not have through the mistakes, let's say, of elders that have made decision on their behalf.
Thank you so much. You briefly talked about kind of punishing those who need to be punished. So did Kosovo conduct legal assessments for women? And are there cases when women were arrested and charged?
Absolutely. For example, the last 11 women will all be appearing in front of the court. And as I said, they are under probation. So that does not mean that they can just, that they are not free, in the sense they are held responsible for any acts that they do. And that means that the probation, it can be turned, it can be overturned, and then they might end up sort of going to prison in case they do not, in case they commit any, they make decisions that they shouldn't be making, in case they spread, disinformation, in case they're gathering with other women and actually, trying to, promote specific ideas. So the good thing is that these women are visited and have regular meetings with the division, and it's all part of the plan and part of the assessment that they, part of the evaluation that they take part in. They do collaborate. However, it is not sort of, in a way, you're not a free person, because and at the same time, if the state is offering you the possibility to get back on your feet and to actually recuperate and sort of have the possibility to repay the debts to the society, then I think this is a good, it's a win-win situation in both ways. At least that is what I believe.
Thank you, Mrs. Qena. Could you tell us a little bit about the civil society organizations and their role in the rehabilitation and reintegration of returnees? And in particular, maybe your role and your organization's role in the as the Community Development Fund of Kosovo?
Yes, thank you. There are various organizations. I would like to mention that basically most of the work that is being done with the returnees is actually supported through foreign donations, because unfortunately Kosovo has not been in a position to sort of divide and to invest the funding that is required to actually enable this, the program of rehabilitation and reintegration. So Community Development Fund is one of the organizations that is benefiting, for example, from GSERV funding, and we implement a program. We do have another SR that actually works under this funding. It is Integra, and it is based around the individual needs of returnees. But I need to emphasize really the communication and the coordination that we have with the Ministry of Internal Affairs. In this sense, they are the first stop that evaluates the needs of people. We design, let's say, the interventions together with them, because there are various issues, and one of them being the security issue, because they visit the people regularly. They see the conditions, the assessments of the family, of any changes, of their whereabouts. are the children attending schools, for example? And it's actually that through this collaboration, they identify the needs, and this is where the intervention is actually implemented. We have, for example, offered women vocational courses because we do think that education is extremely important, and as is the possibility for these women to be able to create an income, if not today, then tomorrow, because they are currently receiving social scheme assistance, some of them, but that this will not be the case for a longer period. So the circumstances will change. We've also invested in parenting classes. It's a way of positive discipline that has been offered to these women and their relatives, and also in combination with non-RFTFs, because we think that it is very important for these women to be exposed to other thinkings, to other experiences, because we think that all of this will influence their education, their awareness, but at the same time, the upbringing of their children. Because at the end of the day, there is this violation in a way that I personally see. When you make a decision that is harmful to your child, you are in a way breaching child's rights, because you should aim to always keep your child safe. And that is the intention. So I think this year, for example, we will be also working with these women for them to understand child rights and to understand that that each individual and each child has their own given right that cannot be taken away or given. It's not a gift. It's something that is ultimately their right. So vocational courses, parenting classes, as well as grant provision, which means that if the women have actually successfully completed, it's mainly sewing courses that the women are interested in, because it provides them with this independence, with doing something in smaller shops, hopefully, and then because they mainly do look after children, which and they need to go to school. So we have then we've given them small grants, and that means that they've received equipment for which they are responsible for over 3 years. And that means that they've signed a contract with the Ministry of Internal Affairs and us, because they cannot just decide not to, to give it away or something. That is something that is also controlled. And we think that it increases the responsibility that they have, because they've been given something that is valuable. And this is the way that we see it. And I can say that this is the same way, more or less, that they experience this, because they feel that they've been given a second chance. So importantly, we also organize a lot of activities with children from which it's not only they benefit, but mainly the children in the school that the children attend. We have forum theater activities, for example, where we see performances, and the children actually do get to discuss and to role play together with the actors on specific issues that we feel are important to be discussed for these children, but also for all children of Kosovo, whether it's differences, bullying, acceptance, and actually it increases the sensitivity. We also have various educational trips, visiting historical cultural sites, because we also consider that it is very important for children to actually increase their sense of identity, and to understand and to be able to appreciate various historical sites, various cultures, various communities that live in Kosovo, and to actually experience it and see, because mainly it's children that have, for example, lived 4 or 5 years in various camps, and they come, and this is the world that sometimes might appear to them hostile. So it's a matter of actually them creating this sense of belonging. There's been healing in education through arts. There's been drama therapy and some various process dramas where we try to provide them with the individual sort of approach for them to be able to express what they've gone through, not in a very therapeutical manner, because they do have these psychiatric sessions that the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the government actually provides them with, which is part of the process of reintegration, which begins with the initial assessment. So it's that same team that actually oversees. And I need to say that all of these activities are closely monitored by the Ministry of Internal Affairs. So we're saying a session where a person is there in order to observe not just the quality, but in order to observe any changes, anything that needs to be addressed. So this is basically kind of what we've offered. And we are currently planning a specific training to increase the capacities of service offerers in terms of providing mental health support. It exists. However, the target group, the beneficiaries' needs are a bit more specific. So this is something that Kosovo has seen as a need to increase the capacities in. And we are also in the process of strengthening the interventions at the local municipal level. This is also very important. Currently, the division of internal, this division for reintegration oversees the whole process. And even though people might be living in specific municipalities, they are still monitoring and actually dealing with the cases at the individual level through communicating with the service offers at the local level. So this is something that Kosovo is currently planning and doing, and it is actually doing this piloting in a specific municipality where we have the highest number of returnees in order to then replicate this further on.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Qena. It's very nice to see all of the involvement from the civil society organizations in Kosovo. Another question is, did the rehabilitation program of Kosovo have an ideological pillar? For example, are there local imams and theologians involved in the rehabilitation of returnees?
They are involved to a degree. They are kind of involved. Let's just, I mean, just to make it clear, we're talking of two worlds and two teachings that are actually very are different and do not align one with the other. Therefore, the acceptance of these preachings and of this way of thinking is also something that is in a way very debatable and not accepted clearly by the returnees. So what happens is that the Ministry of Internal Affairs and actually this division takes part, kind of consults with the imams. Also, these imams have had opportunities to visit families, to discuss ideologies with them. And importantly, they do share their feedback with the Ministry of Internal Affairs in order to improve these state interventions. So in a way, they are involved and they do advise, let's say advise, they are partners in this sense. And for example, when it comes to our work, Community Development Fund, for example, regularly holds these meetings with frontliners where also imams are part of these discussions because for all of us as a society, it is important to discuss the problems, to say this is what's happening, because various professions will have various feedback. So we use these meetings to discuss. And again, these meetings are also, as I said, maybe needless to say, but organized in close coordination with the ministry, because they do advise us as to, they know who needs to be sort of consulted and who needs to take part in these meetings.
Thank you so much. Are there any age and gender sensitive approaches in place in Kosovo? And do you have enough kind of specialists and practitioners to carry out all of these approaches?
Well, there are very many issues, but to say the rehabilitation takes into account the specifics of age and specifics of gender, and it begins so from the beginning in terms of you know, the needs, whether it's a woman providing services to women, whether it's children. And it's good that all the professionals, let's say, are available. And also the ministry has been very open to actually to suggestions and in saying that this needs to be improved or this needs to be changed. I would just like to mention just briefly that the children, for example, because this is not something I mentioned, children upon their return, the thing is that most of the children that have returned were younger than 6 years old. So there was still not the issue of going to school. So there has been the possibility to create these catch-up classes where all the children are gathered. So it can be good, not necessarily, because you might be saying that you're grouping all the children and together and kind of additionally stigmatizing them. But at the same time, these are children that go to a specific class, various ages gather, and then each child will be sent to a different school where they live, for example. So they might not end up in the school that they've attended these catch-up classes, and with the idea to actually provide support to enable them to join school where depending on their age group. When this is the case, for example, that you have a child in a different municipality, there is also special need. There are some catch-up classes where, for example, we hire a teacher that supports the child to catch up in order to be able to start September. So this is something that I wish really that could be done for every single child. Not in the Republic of Kosovo, anyone that needs additional care should be provided these measures. So there is this great dependency on donor support, and there have been the various issues that, for example, we lack of budget. I think that from next year, Kosovo will be actually implementing a sort of pledging and dividing funds for the reintegration. Lack of human resources. We've had lack of knowledge, lack of understanding the problems, and also of applying the interventions. So by all means, we are talking of, social services there might be one social worker that deals with over 500 cases. So it's impossible to have this support. That's why the civil society organizations have kind of shared this burden, and it has worked well. I'm not saying ideally, but it has supported the government. It will be very important and very crucial to see what happens afterwards. And I do hope that the support that has been given so far has enabled us, I'm saying the government, to actually understand the gaps and to invest where it should. For example, in this case, you have the municipal councils for community security, and they are being strengthened currently in this pilot project because they're a council that works in a specific small municipality somewhere, and it will have a psychologist, a social worker, a teacher. But now we're saying these people might be involved also in working with children with disabilities. So we're talking of overburdening a specific group. And that's why it's important to support them for as long as we can, to provide the good practices and to say this has worked well and this is where we need to invest more. So I don't know, maybe I complicated all of these kind of mentioning everything. But so far, the good thing has been this good communication and the coordination and the soft approach that has been used, because it has enabled us to implement the R&R program so far with, I would say, relatively good success. The trust has been built, and the division has acted in a way as a bridge between offering the service, being punitive, kind of combining the punitive but also restorative measures in order to enable these people to go back to sort of start reliving, but at the same time not forgetting that always being cautious. Always being cautious. And I think that more should be done in general in terms of prevention. We should be working with younger generations. We should be investing much more in order for people to never think of, for radical measures to never occur in let's say, ideally in anyone's mind, to be a tolerant and a more vibrant society. Tolerant society, definitely.
Thank you so much. As you may already know, in November, we are making a compendium of good practices in the rehabilitation reintegration progress. And you've kind of already talked about the good practices in Kosovo, but maybe if you could focus also on the practical interventions in Kosovo and highlight a few good practices that you think would be really important to mention when writing on good practices in Kosovo.
I personally, because I come from a background of, working in child rights, I really do think that the work that we've done with children is something that is really worth highlighting. As I said, this support should be given to each and every child. However, I do think that having in mind the specifics, the sensitivity of these cases and the vulnerabilities, the traumas that the children have gone through, I think that this combined approach of individual care and also group care is an effective way of actually creating a balance of them feeling that they are worthy, but at the same time of them feeling that they are that there is a community that they can be part of. And I think that that is also important. And this combined with the work, let's say, with the positive parenting, with women being empowered and women understanding children's rights, is something that that is a very good practice. And I think that this is sort of the investment that can be done and should be done with all the children, in order, especially with vulnerable, especially with marginalized groups, because in Kosovo, and I'm sure that in many other countries in the region, the not belonging and not having the financial means to be part of the various activities that normally should be for free, ideally, create this sense of seclusion. And this is a way to overcome that would be for children to be part of groups, for children to be part of extracurricular activities, to be part of society. So this, I would highlight this approach.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Qena. Thank you for your work also, because that's amazing work that you're doing right now in Kosovo. And thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge with the Bulan Institute for Peace